So that day, I went to the 7th floor of Simon Cancer Center, laid down on a bed, looked out the window, and there was the beautiful Gateway Arch. They gave me really good drugs that time. They shot them right in my PICC line. I was spinning. I did not care what was going on. I was joking around. And I got a bone marrow biopsy. Barely hurt, felt some pressure. No big deal this time. My 3rd one in less than a month. Went home and waited on a phone call. By the time we got the phone call, I was back in Little Rock, spending the night with my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law because I had to be checked into the hospital the next day for my 3rd round of chemo. And the 3rd round is like the 1st round. So I knew what I was getting into. We weren't gonna have to be there for 28 days this time. We would be there for a week and I would go home and recover. My white count would go 0 at home and then it would come back at home. I got a phone call at their house the night before I was supposed to go back in the hospital from the nurse at St. Louis. And she told me, you know, he told you that you weren't gonna have to have a transplant if this test came back clean. She said, unfortunately, it did not come back clean. You still have a little bit left. MRD, minimal residual disease. And we're gonna have to do the stem cell transplant. So we're gonna begin the process of trying to find you a match. Usually they use a sibling match if somebody matches you. My sibling's adopted, so that wasn't an option for me. I went to the hospital, UAMS, the next day to begin chemo. Pretty hopeless, still at peace though. I didn't feel bad during that week because that was not the week that my body would go into what's called nadir, which is, you know, chemo goes like this. You have this, and then you have a rapid decline. This bottom part's called nadir, and then you move back up, and that's the recovery period. I would be doing that at home. So I really didn't feel bad that week. It was fine. But I had lost a lot of hope. Things were not going according to plan still. I was a special case. You don't want to be a special case when it comes to things like leukemia. You don't want the doctors to have to guess what to do with you. So they administered the chemo over the next 5 to 7 days. I can't remember. I went to the lab before we left because I had to get something new called new Lasta. It's a $27,000 little machine that they stick on your back, and it administers a medicine called new Lasta about 48 hours after they put it on you. So that they time it perfectly for whenever you end chemo. They time the new Lasta to beep, and then it injects you. It doesn't hurt really when it's injecting. And then over the course of the next week or so, it rebuilds your white blood cells. They put it on me. We go home. We feel free again. Play with the kids, love and life. Just soaking up what I had because I knew that my chances were still very, very grim. A few days later, the Lasta hit. As it's rebuilding your white blood count, it hurts. It's unbelievable pain. I had some of my darkest nights with that. I was on oxycodone. I tried everything to fix the pain. Nothing helped me. It just hurt so bad. Up to that point, I had never realized how somebody could beg for death, but I was begging God to kill me. Death had to be better than what I was going through at the moment. But finally, the pain stopped, and I was okay. About a month later, I had to go back for round 4. And this started getting routine. I would go for round 4, then go back to St. Louis a few days later for them to keep an eye on me and check me. We were Little Rock to St. Louis, Texarkana, back and forth. back and forth, back and forth. We ended up doing 8 rounds of chemo. I just started going to an alternative doctor. I was driving 4 hours to go do that. Was doing chelation, UVB. I was trying everything. The UVB is where they pull your blood out, they put it under a fluorescent light and they put you back in. It sounds like kooky science, but my goodness, I was trying everything. Chelation is where they hook you up to an IV and they pump you full of chelating things which pull heavy metals out of you, and also high-powered vitamin C. I was trying everything. I didn't tell my cancer doctors that I was doing that part, but I was not gonna die. I did not wanna die. And when I started doing that, I really feel like I started getting better. I at least started feeling better. I was gray. I looked terrible. But when I started getting that alternative treatment, the life came back in me. This color started coming back to my skin. I was feeling good. I went to my in-laws' house and I picked up my son and I lifted him in the air. It was beautiful. I couldn't do any of that. I really feel like that stuff helped. Maybe didn't cure, but it helped. So I would do chemo, new Lasta, terrible, chemo, new Lasta, chemo, new Lasta, Little Rock, St. Louis, Kirbyville, Little Rock, St. Louis, Kirbyville. Lots of driving, lots of money spent, so much money spent. The alternative doctor didn't take insurance. He was cash only, which, you know, sounds sketchy, and it probably was sketchy, and that's okay, because the life came back in me. And you know what? You know what he told me the first day I met with him? He said, I've treated lots of people with leukemia, and none of them have died. He said, keep getting the chemo, but don't do that stem cell transplant if you can get away with it. Don't do that full body radiation. That's hard to come back from. I didn't have a choice. You know, I had to do what they said to do in St. Louis or I was gonna die. But we were having trouble getting it paid for. It was expensive. It's like $80,000 up front. That was delaying things. The lack of a match was delaying things. I think that there's a blessing in the delay. God was working. God knew what he was doing. We went back to St. Louis in January and had another bone marrow biopsy. Got a call a few days later. You're in remission. Those words were so sweet to hear. I mean, I knew I was gonna have to still have the stem cell transplant, but it's much better to have a stem cell transplant when they've already cured your leukemia than to let the full body radiation do it. I'd still have to have the full body radiation just in case, but my goodness, the prognosis got a little bit better that day. I still did not want to have that stem cell transplant though, especially after talking to the alternative doctor. But I was gonna do it. I was going to do it. We were trying to come up with the money. We were looking for the match. We were doing all the things. I kept getting on chemo in Little Rock, come home, heal, take the new Lasta, go back, get more chemo, go to St. Louis. This was my life now, traveling and going to the hospital and staying at the hospital.